and more besides. For late in the year, merchant ships are arriving from the east. They bring the Black Death to Venice. Gabriele de Mussis, an Italian notary who lives through the dark days that follow, gives voice to the horror of the sailors who have unwittingly brought the catastrophe home.
To our anguish, we were carrying the darts of death. We were spreading a poison from our lips even as we spoke.
Of course, they didn't have any idea that the plague was spread by a bacterium, by a microscopic organism that can't be seen by the naked eye. But they did have a sense and a knowledge that the plague could be spread from person to person.
As Agimet heads back to Geneva, the world behind him begins to fall. Venetians are dying at the astonishing rate of 600 a day. In September 1347, the plague enters France through ships trading at Marseille. Merchant ships carrying the infection sail to Spain. In Barcelona, about 60% of the population is thought to have perished.
You could imagine a person, let's say a sailor, working in the dock area, being bitten by an infectious flea. They would get on their ship, and then they could travel on their ship, and becomes, again, 2 to 6 days. So there's the potential for people to move around, move from one area to another before becoming. Of course, this same ship may have rats with infectious rat fleas, and then when the ship reaches a port, those rats and their fleas can get off and spread the disease as well.
In spring, the Black Death travels up the Rhone River to Avignon, where the Pope resides.
Vignerin, je vous en supplie. La maladie frappe à la porte.
Doctor, noter per mio protegere.
Though Guy de Chauliac urges him to flee, Clement VI refuses to leave his palace. By August 1348, the plague reaches Paris. Half its population will die. When it reaches Bordeaux, Princess Joan, the daughter of King Edward III, has just arrived from her sea journey. She will rest at the royal estate for a while and then continue to Castile and her prince. Joan is perhaps the most well-guarded in Europe, but archers and castle walls cannot protect her from the unseen enemy.
Non, non! Vous ne pouvez pas passer ici! Non! C'est trop dangereux pour la princesse!
The pestilence seems to strike at random, wiping out some households but sparing others. Even before it sows destruction, it breeds terror.
There was nothing they could do. And it's that sense of facing an event over which you have absolutely no power that makes it such a dramatic event in human history.
I've often tried to imagine what it must have felt like to hear that in the town across the mountains, 75% of the people had just died. And they did hear. They received letters before the plague came. They knew the plague was coming in many places. So they had time to think about what's going to happen when it gets here. And I can't really imagine a scarier thought.
Consumed by fear, many of the gentry flee, leaving the less fortunate to fend for themselves.
What we see in literature are these cowardly figures, the rich who are going into the countryside and who are there frightened by their own mortality. So who's left behind? Who is back in town suffering but the poor and those who are unable to do what the rich can?
In England, Edward III and his eldest son retreat to a country estate, bolting the gates behind them. But there's no such refuge for the serfs who farm the land. It was in the villages that mortality was at its height.